Welcome to Trauma Free Relationship. I'm Tom Philp. I've been working with couples for decades to help them break those painful patterns that keep them stuck so they can restore communication, repair quicker, and stay connected longer. Now, I'm really excited about this episode today because we're going to talk about why do good communication skills why don't they fix bad cycles? Why aren't improving communication skills enough to sometimes fix the relationship? So you've probably heard, use I statements, practice active listening, and those are all good communication skills. Don't get me wrong. But there's also a problem. A lot of times what we see is they don't actually work in the real world. Sometimes using I statements still doesn't stop your partner being defensive. Sometimes practicing good active listening skills still can cause your partner to get dysregulated or upset, or maybe they feel like you're not really still hearing them. So even though these are good communication skills, they don't always fix the cycles that are happening in the relationship. The number one reason couples come to me, I probably hear more than any other reason, is we need to work on our communication. We've got bad communication. And they're not wrong, right? All the couples and even individuals that I work with, they're not wrong. There is a communication issue there, but it's rarely the words that they're saying to each other. Rather, they've got something else that's going on that's actually breaking down the communication and causing problems in the relationship. And that's because there's these hidden patterns inside the relationship that's actually breaking down the communication. So we're going to talk today about three different things that are causing breakdown of communications. First of all, good communication skills don't fix bad cycles because the nervous system, when it is dysregulated, it overrides communication skills. When you are in fight or flight, or when you are in freeze or fawn, if you've been triggered and you are now popped out of the window of tolerance, what that essentially means is that you're no longer able to draw on the area of your brain right up here in the prefrontal cortex where you can think, logic, reason, use empathy, organize your thoughts. All of that stuff is sort of offline, so to speak. I hate to use a computer metaphor for the brain, but there's some similarities between the two. And when you are dysregulated, you cannot communicate well. You cannot communicate your intentions very well. You cannot communicate the deeper levels of meaning that you're trying to communicate to your partner. And all those things are essential for being understood. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the nervous system overrides our ability to communicate in the moment. The second one is, and this is the key point here, the cycle is the problem, not the words. It's not that you can't understand your partner's words. It's just that you guys are now caught in a cycle that's actually breaking down the ability to communicate and connect in that moment. And finally, skills don't address the emotional needs that are underneath. So we can talk all day long to our partner about surface level issues. We can argue about why you didn't text back. We can argue about whose turn it is to clean the dishes or to put the kids to bed, right? Those are all surface level issues. But if we're not being able to talk about and drill down deeper in those conversations, then we're not able to really fix our communication skills anyway. And again, that's probably because we are caught in cycles that are breaking down that communication. So let's start with the first one. As I mentioned, when one or both partners are triggered, the nervous system overrides the ability to communicate in the moment. It literally weakens your communication skills in the moment. And it does that because one or both partners have become dysregulated. And so think about it this way. You could be the best driver in the world, right? I mean, maybe you have superior driving skills in your automobile. and you can weave in and out of the cones like we see on all those car commercials and things like that. But the best driver in the world cannot handle the car well or even at all if they hit black ice. So think about, when we get dysregulated, our nervous system now is popped out of the window of tolerance. And as a result, we're in fight or flight, because that's the most common too. That's like being on black ice. And no matter how good of a communicator you might be, no matter how good of a communicator I might be, and if you've seen any of my videos, maybe you can argue that point. Maybe I'm not always communicating really well. I certainly can understand that. But no matter how well we might be able to communicate, when we're on black ice, when we are dysregulated, we're not working out of the area of our brain that allows us really to put together a coherent argument, to be able to draw on our own experience and think inward about what's happening inside of us. Rather, we tend to focus on the source of danger, and so we look outside of ourselves. So that's why they talk about using I statements and active listening skills. But when we're triggered, what we do, because when we're triggered, we're in our protection, right? We are feeling a sense of danger in our relationship, either in our relationship or to our sense of self. And we focus on the point of that danger, and that's usually our partner. And so we're fixated on whatever it is they did or said, or the look on their face or their tone that caused us to be triggered in the first place. And that's what we're honing in on. Well, that by that sheer mechanism of doing that, meaning that we're now in our protective system and not in our connective system, as a result, we're not focusing in on all the other maybe positive things that they have said. They may have said, well, I'm sorry I didn't text you back, but I had blah, 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 blah going on. What we hear is, I'm sorry I didn't text you back. Oh, you're not important enough to me to set these things aside, right? And maybe that's not even what they're saying, but we're filtering a lot of that out because we're looking through a protective frame and a protective system in those moments. So when we get dysregulated, it's very much like being on black ice. And no matter how an effective communicator we might be, when we're on black ice, we are not going to be able to communicate effectively. We're not going to be able to control the car. We've got to get to an area where we can stop, pull to the side, and get off or get out of the way of the black ice and get back on pavement that actually allows us to have traction, right? And this is why in our cycle reset program, we always talk about regulation before communication. Regulation before communication. Because unless you get out of the black ice and back on a place where you've got now friction with the tires, you're not going to be able to control that car very well. And being dysregulated is a little bit like that. It also makes me think of that John Mayer song, and we're slow dancing in a burning room, right? Here we are, slow dancing together, and the whole house is burning down around us, and yet we're acting like it's not even happening. Well, that's going to affect us. It's going to affect our ability to interact. It's going to affect our ability to dance in that moment. And eventually, that cycle is going to get the better of us. Maybe in that moment, maybe long term, it certainly breaks down trust. We know that as a fact. When cycles get rigid inside relationships, when they last for years at a time, they break down trust, they break down a sense of safety, and they break down the resilience of the partner. They end up feeling more like they're walking on eggshells and very much less like they can come to their partner and depend on their partner, and their partner will actually hear them and respond in a way that feels safe and feels secure in that relationship. So, another sort of metaphor we could use is sort of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I'm sure you've heard that before, right? Without focusing on these cycles, Trying to fix your communication skills is like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. The Titanic's going down. Rearranging the chairs aren't going to matter. It's futile to do that. Trying to fix communication skills when the couple is caught in cycles is a little bit the same. It's like trying to rearrange the deck chairs for the next day's performance while the Titanic's sinking. So we want to put first things first, and so we've got to hone in on those cycles. So one of the things the cycles do, or they can't do rather, is they can't fix communication skills when we're dysregulated and when we pop out of that window of tolerance. Again, it's sort of like trying to communicate better, but the cycle's taken over. So we'll just kind of go over here and try to rearrange the deck chairs, even though we're caught in the middle of a cycle. Or here we are slipping and sliding, twirling around on black ice. And no matter how good of a driver we are, as long as we're on black ice, as long as we're stuck in this cycle, we're not going to be able to communicate effectively. So that's the first thing, is that why does good communication skills, why don't they fix bad cycles? Because usually cycles are an escalation of triggers. They're an escalation of the nervous system that now has gone into fight or flight. And when you are escalated or you pop out of the window of tolerance, however you want to say that, however you have come to kind of know that, that first thing's got to be first. We've got to get regulated, right? We've got to get in the lifeboats and put on the life jackets and quit messing around with the chairs. We've got to get off the black ice if we can, pull over, get on good traction where our skills as a driver can take back over. So that's really important, being able to recognize that no matter how good of communication skills you might have, if you're caught in a cycle, it's not going to matter how well of a communicator you are. You've got to be able to de-escalate and regulate that cycle first, then you can communicate better. All right, the second one we've already even touched on a little bit is the cycle's the problem, not the words. And I've said this, so many times. It's about being focused more on the process and less on the content. And I don't know if there's just one thing. There's so many things I would like to teach couples and individuals to focus on, but this is certainly up there for me. Paying attention to the process when you interact with your partner and not just the content is such an important skill in the relationship that I cannot emphasize it enough. What do I mean by that? When I say talk about the process or focus on the process, not just the content is the words. It's the words you're saying to each other. It's the words you're hearing, which are important, don't get me wrong, but they're not nearly as important as the inflection, as the tone, as the facial expressions that are actually behind the words. For example, I can come in at the end of a long day. Maybe my wife is in the kitchen preparing dinner, and I can come in and I can say, "How was your day?" Okay. That kind of hits a little abrasive, doesn't it? It's like, ooh, okay, clearly he's not had a good day, right? Or I can come in at the end of the day and I can say, "How was your day?" Totally same words, but very different tone of voice. My partner's going to react different depending on my tone of voice. It matters. And because if she turns around and she says, "Well, it was all right. It doesn't sound like you're doing well. Are you okay? Did you have a bad day?" "Oh, you wouldn't believe it. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to bark that out, but yeah, I've had a horrible day." "Okay, well, let's talk about it. Come on, pull up a chair. Let me hear about what's going on." Right? Depending on how they respond, she would be in tune to the process of what's happening between us and not just focused on the words. She might turn around and say, "Well, why did you say it that way? I didn't do anything wrong." Okay, well, that's not focusing on the process. That's fixating on the words. And maybe that's a great way to say it. I just came up with that. Focus on the process. Don't fixate on the words. Because the process matters. How we interact with each other is probably 2/3 of the way or the ability for us to prevent cycles if we can tune into the way we interact with each other and not just strictly what we're saying to each other. So process over content. Process matters. And it's being mindful about the way we interact with each other. It's being mindful about how we say things, how things come out of our mouths, not just the words, but the tone or the facial expression. Or, I watch couples all the time that I'm working with, and one partner will say something, and they're just giving their experience of maybe what it's like to be in the relationship or what it's like for them in the cycle. And I can see all the time the other person having this emotional reaction in the other chair or on the other side of the couch or whatever, and they're crossing their legs and they're crossing their arms, and and they're clearly, there's something their partner has said that is triggering them. And I see this all the time. And so they need to be aware that, there's a process here. My partner is explaining their experience, which may be different than my experience. But in those moments, they feel like their partner is expressing things about them that just run contrary to how they see what is going on in the relationship. And so they tend to have these emotional reactions, and they can start to get dysregulated, right? And even right there, that's a great early warning sign that, okay, we could be in a potential cycle right now. I could see a cycle potentially going on right here in front of me. Even though there's not a lot of words that might be said, one partner is starting to really get dysregulated. The other partner is starting to see their partner get dysregulated while they're talking about their experience of the relationship. And if that goes on for a little bit longer, it might trigger the original partner who was originally talking. And so you can see how these things can just sort of escalate. And when that happens, it breaks down communication skills. It breaks down our ability to really be able to communicate, to really be able to formulate what we want to say. And oftentimes when we do communicate, it's more at the surface level. It's not layers down where we can talk about the deeper meanings of what's going on for us in the relationship, and be able to ask or clarify the things that we might need in the relationship. And so, the second thing here is that the cycle is the problem, not the words. And we want to be able to focus on the process and not just the content. It's a little bit like, I was at a fundraiser not too long ago, and they were doing a trivia game. And in the part of the trivia game is they would play a song, and they would cut it off, and part of the job of the table would then to fill in the next line of the lyrics. And so one of the songs they were playing is Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline, right? Which is a huge sing-along. It's become kind of this incredible anthem for him in the last several, well, maybe for a long time, but several decades. And people fill in words during the break, and I'm not going to sing it for you because I'm not a singer, but you probably have heard the song before. And so the whole room is singing the song, and all of a sudden it cuts off, and you're supposed to fill out the rest of the line. And I think that's a good metaphor for what happens often. It's like we know that line because we've heard the song so much that it doesn't take anything for us to continue singing that line in our head. And so everybody's frantically writing it down, but some tables are still, just singing right along to the song. And I think that's a little bit what happens sometimes when we get caught into cycles. It's like we don't know how to stop, and the cycle plays out regardless of whether we're communicating well or not. And so we've got to be able to sort of stop, and as I've said, regulate before we communicate. That's a huge mantra that we talk about in our program. Regulate before communicate. Huge mantra. And so it's almost like we've got that whole second line built up in our body, and we know it so well that when that starts to play out, when the song starts to go, no matter where it cuts off, we just continue right on because it's so ingrained in us. Jimmy Buffett, Margaritaville's another one of those songs they played, right? And everybody kind of knows the lyrics to that song. It's a huge sing-along. And when the song cuts off, when the cycle starts, it's almost like our body continues with the lyric no matter what, because it's just so ingrained in us. And that's why it's so difficult to, no matter how well we communicate, to be able to get through to our partner or have our partner hear and understand us, because the cycle has taken over and it's not really about communication skills anymore. It's now about the cycle. And the third point we want to make today is that communication skills don't always address the emotional needs underneath. And so a lot of times when couples are communicating, they might be communicating clearly. But one of the things I've seen is that we can communicate all day long about the surface things. Why didn't you text me back? Can you take care of the kids tonight? How do we shuffle schedules? We need to clean the house, or whose turn is it to do the dishes, or whatever it might be. That's surface level stuff. But it doesn't necessarily get at the deeper needs. And again, if couples are caught in cycles, if you've got a repeatable, painful cycle that shows up in your relationship, it's going to be really hard to dig down and to the deeper needs that you have, because you're caught on the surface stuff. So communication skills, even if both partners are good communicators, and I've seen some phenomenal communicators, but if there's still a cycle in the relationship, it's not going to be able to help them drill down to the deeper needs that they have. And so those deeper needs of feeling safe or reassurance or feeling valued in the relationship, those are the things that need to be expressed. But we have to be able to alleviate our cycles and interrupt them in real time, and do that enough that it begins to feel safer for both partners to be able to express their deeper needs to one another, because then they don't have as much fear about falling right back into a cycle again. So even good communication skills prevent couples from being able to drill down and ask for what they need. It prevents them from being able to drill down a couple of layers below the surface and say, you know what I'm really needing is some reassurance. It feels like when you shut down sometimes that I'm 1,000 miles away and I can't reach you. I just want to know that you're here with me, that what I'm expressing to you matters. And the partner says, oh, absolutely. I'm sorry. I know sometimes when I get overwhelmed, I can shut down. It leaves you feeling alone. You matter so much to me, and I'm working on that. I'm trying to stay more emotionally engaged in our conversations because I don't want to shut down. I don't want to get overwhelmed. Maybe I could start saying something when I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, just so that you know kind of what's happening. Oh, wow, that would be awesome. I would love that. And if you could do that, then what I'll do is I'll start maybe slowing down a little bit, so I can maybe not overwhelm you as much. Oh, that would be awesome. So being able to get at those deeper needs is really important in being able to break those cycles. Again, notice that good communication skills cannot break through bad cycles. They cannot break through painful cycles. Regulate before you communicate. We've got to get regulated first, then we can communicate. Then we can communicate our deeper needs to one another. Trying to communicate our needs to one another while we're caught in a cycle is a little bit like, raising the sails in a sailboat, and we've got good wind, but we're going in the wrong direction. We need to be going east, and we're actually heading west. So, we've got great wind in our sails. We're making really good time, but we're heading completely the wrong direction. And so it can often feel like, wow, we're communicating really well, but we're actually not getting any closer to what we need from each other because we're heading in the wrong direction. So we've got to fix and repair those cycles first. We've got to be able to recognize them and interrupt them in real time. So here's 3 things that I want you to think about and work on in terms of trying to disrupt those cycles in real time in order to restore good communication skills. And the first one, obviously, is regulate before you communicate. You've heard me say that, I don't know, maybe half a dozen times so far. That really is true. I can't emphasize it enough. If you guys are caught in a cycle, you're not going to be able to communicate very well. Matter of fact, your communication might actually increase and escalate the cycle even more. So first, get regulated. You can use the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. You can use breathing techniques. You can call a timeout and step away. Whatever might work for you is something you need to work on in order to try to get regulated. Second, get good at recognizing and interrupting the cycle in real time every single time. You want to be able to really interrupt it in real time. And so you've got to be able to recognize it. And that might mean you recognize the expressions or the early warning signs in your partner. You know, do you see their face kind of start to get red? Do you see their eyes narrow? Do you see it start to grimace? Do you hear them respond in a little bit of a defensive tone? Are they trying to explain things instead of truly listening and validating your feelings? These can all be early warning signs. And if that happens, you've got to say something to the effect of, hey, it looks like we might be starting a cycle here. You know how we can kind of do that sometimes, and it really breaks down our ability to communicate. Let's just slow this down for a minute, because in this moment, I'm not really feeling heard. Not because I don't think you want to, but because maybe I've said something that might have triggered us or caused us to get defensive. I know how we can kind of do that thing sometimes. So I'm just going to slow down, if that's okay with you, and I'm going to kind of back up and see if I can't repeat a few things, and maybe we can prevent this cycle. So that would be sort of trying to catch it and interrupt it in real time. And the third thing is try to actually drill down and get to your deeper needs. And this is hard for a lot of people. And this is sometimes where trauma comes in, because people that have had past trauma or past hurts or past wounds, however you want to say it, sometimes they don't feel like they have a right to ask for their needs. Sometimes they don't feel like they have a right to ask something of their partner or hold on to their needs long enough to be able to even ask for it. But the more able you are to be able to say, I need some reassurance in this moment, or I need more closeness and connection, or I need more safety when I approach you with my feelings, or I need more validation that you've really heard and understood me. All those things are some deeper needs that need to eventually be expressed. Learning how to drill down and learning how to express those deeper needs is going to sort of cut through all the noise of the cycle and cut through all the noise of I statements and active listening skills. Not that those things aren't important, but being able to really draw on those needs and communicate that really is what your partner is going to be able to hear and understand much better. Hey, thanks for listening. If you want to learn more, I'll put down in the liner notes below, but you can go down and you can download our Getting to the Root of the Problem ebook. This is something I put together for couples that really helps them learn how to go from surface to depth in their conversations. It really helps them learn how to drill down these 5 different layers so that they can get more to what it is they want and need, more of those attachment needs in the relationship, and not just stay on the surface of the communication. So that when we communicate, we're doing so in a more clear way that's reducing our cycles or stopping them altogether and getting more to what we really need.